Hello, and welcome to The Family Show. I'm your host, Eleanor Rossman, and joining me this week and every week are Brenda and Randy Lee.
So good to be here.
Good to be here. Always good to see you guys. And, I have to say, I haven't seen this program, but I'm going to watch it. We're going to talk today about the last 2 episodes of the series, The Bear.
Yeah, and Brenda and I were just talking about that, and we don't know if you should watch it, so we'll get there, right?
Okay.
So we were talking a couple weeks ago about episodes 6 and 7, and we skipped we saw episode 8, but we finally got to 9 and 10, right? The second season of Bear. It's a series about this world's greatest chef kind of character. Comes back to Chicago to run the family restaurant, this Greasy Spoon, right? After his older brother commits suicide. And episodes 6 and 7 were about the two perfect dinners that had these wildly different implications. So we just finally got watching episodes 9 and 10 of the second season. So we finished the second season, right? So, and we're all caught up. And people may be wondering, this guy keeps talking about this TV series, kind of like what you were saying, Eleanor. Does he want us to watch this show, right? Is this show any good? And I was thinking about it, and those are really great questions, right? Is it any good? And I think the camera work, the imagery in this series is incredible. And the acting, the characters are all really easy to connect with. I think the writers are very creative, imaginative people. So should people watch the series? And the answer to that is, I don't know, right? First of all, I think Hollywood has gotten really into unnecessarily profane language.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Right. And if that bothers you, that is definitely present in the show, right? The bigger question for me, though, is the subject matter of the show, right? I've been watching for 2 seasons, right? Get to the end of season 2, and I finally know what the show is about. And it isn't just about a restaurant in Chicago, right? I don't know if the writers and the director, the actors know this, but so far, fundamentally, the show is about a world without God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And on that level, the show is very illuminating. But a world without God is really hard to watch, right? Right. It's funny, but we think we know what a world without God looks like. But I don't think we do, because our Father loves us too much to let us see one, right? You get to episode 10, last episode of the second season. It's the grand reopening of this former Greasy Spoon dive kind of place, opening into an ultra-fine dining experience kind of place. And the stars of the episode are doors, right? Not people, they're doors, right? The mom of the 2 owners of the restaurant is estranged from the family. She's a very messed up, broken individual. But the daughter owner, who wants to be reconciled with the mom, invites the mother to this grand reopening, right? Mom gets to the front door of the restaurant, but she can't bring herself to open the door and go in, right? Son-in-law discovers her there, tries to get her to come in, but she won't, she can't, right? Love is waiting for the mom on the other side of the door. Forgiveness is waiting for the mom on the other side of the door. Healing, restoration are all on the other side of the door, but she can't pass through the door because she is certain she is unloved and unlovable.
Right. That was my takeaway, even with some of the acting is phenomenal. And the degree of brokenness, it's just like, I don't know if I can watch one more speck.
Wow.
Honestly, in a family unit, it's just as Randy said, it is just so.
Are you talking about like a really dysfunctional family or
Oh,
worse?
gosh.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the irony is it's a really dysfunctional family trying so hard to be functional
But each of
Without
them,
God?
without God.
without
Right?
God, and
Yeah.
each of them, as it unfolds, comes down to the core of they each believe they're not able to be loved. And so a world without love and what that looks like.
Yes.
And so you got this mom, and on top of this unlovable dynamic, she is unable to forgive herself, and she is unable to conceive that others could forgive her, right?
Yeah.
She even says at one point, I don't know how to be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I don't know how to be forgiven, right?
Yeah.
The world's greatest chef guy, right, gets locked in the freezer, handle's broken, can't open the door, right? People are calling to him through the door, I love you, but he can't open that door. He can't accept that love. He can't reciprocate that love, right? It's very ironic, right? You have this show about this restaurant that changes hands because a guy commits suicide. But the real tragedy of the show, and this is a very cold thing to say,
Mm-hmm.
but the real tragedy of the show becomes not the guy who died. It's the people who are living, believing that they're unloved and unlovable. People who believe that they can't become, and this is yet another dynamic of this brokenness, people who believe they can't become more than they currently are.
I think a lot of people have experienced rejection from a failed love affair or marriage or friendship or whatever. But at the base of it, at least you say, well, you know what? Okay, I was rejected by so-and-so, but I know God loves me.
Yeah.
I know he created me because he loves me.
And I think of all the, say, the current, whether you're middle school or high school, when that peer pressure really starts to build. And all of a sudden, you're not in the cool group, or you get a look, or, people are talking about you. And what that does, if you don't have that core, the strength that God loves me, to be able to go home to a family and kind of talk about that, and the parents send you out and say, but God loves you. There is your strength. If you don't have that, you go back into that daily, how that wears you down and deteriorates your self-image, and then you get into where we are today.
Yeah, and it creates blocks.
Yeah.
Block God from coming into our life, and others into our life become such a shell of protection.
Right.
That it's really not living, is it?
I mean, that's in a world without God, when you experience those rejections, you are experiencing rejections in the most profound relationships in your life.
Mm-hmm.
In a world where there is God, in the most profound relationship in your life, there is never rejection.
Yeah.
It's like all these tangential relationships may falter, but the central relationship in your life is always marked by love, right? A world without God is a world without love, a world where people feel trapped behind doors, separated by their past, their failings, their imperfections. I read a parable kind of story once about a little kid, and this little kid has his nickel, and he walks up to the candy machine, and the candy machine has a sign on it that says out of order, right?
Yeah.
But the kid can't read, right? The little kid can see the candy, right? It's there in the machine. He has the nickel, but he can't get the candy. He's so close, it should be so easy, and instead it's impossible, right? You watch the show, it's populated by good, likable people, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
Right? We're not enough to make the world work, right? Our love is not enough to make the world work, right? All these people working so hard, loving so hard to make something good, and it all goes undone anyway, right? You watch episode 9, and these people seem so close to a happy ending, and then in episode 10, they just can't bring it home.
Yeah, and what's so interesting too, in the midst of all this like confusion and brokenness and shouting, and several times there's images on the wall of Christ. Did you notice that? And it's almost like they're missing it. He's there, and they're just missing.
Yeah, looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get so caught up in the show that I'm missing, right? It's why we end up with this show.
Randy.
Like, I think it's a world without God, right?
Yeah.
You think that men left to their own devices are corrupted and distorted, right? It's called original sin, right? And you don't solve the problem of original sin by bringing 1,000 or 1,000,000 or billions of broken people together, right? The only global fix for our mutual brokenness is what Brenda is seeing on the walls in the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's God.
Yeah, right in front of your face.
Mm-hmm. Or that's what we got. That's where he ought to be, not always right in front of mine.
No.
But that's where we got to keep him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why when you go to Mass, we have we have statues, we have the crucifix. You can be, wow. But you have to have that stuff in your home, too.
I was just thinking that very same thing. I thought, I finally found a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus that I really like. There's some that are like, he's so feminine or whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I have it up on the mantle.
Nice.
And I see him, and I've got, Our Lady Guadalupe over here framed.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, we are visual people.
We are.
For the most part. And so I have to be reminded constantly.
Yeah. We went to dinner last night at a friend's house, and over her mantle, she has a huge picture of Sacred Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's with like St. Margaret Mary. And, we were chatting, but every 10 seconds,
you looked
eyes. And I finally said to her, that is a phenomenal image to have in your great room here. How can you walk through there and not look at that and say a prayer?
I remember Michael and I went to New York. There was a lecture with Archbishop Chaput, and behind Archbishop Chaput was this beautiful Rembrandt picture of Jesus, and he said, people, you need to have pictures of Jesus in your house. Mm-hmm. I would say in Mary as well.
Mm-hmm.
With the family show, and we're talking about what the world would look like without God in it.
That's what we were talking about, right? And I think Jesus sort of weighs in on this in the prodigal son parable in Luke, right? So what happens? The younger son wants to live in a world outside the presence of his father, right? Kind of like us today. So he says, Dad, give me what's coming to me. Actually, it's what he's looking for is what he wants, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing's coming to him, but he was, Dad, give me what I want, what's coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pretend you're dead, right? Liquidate your assets. I'll leave you behind, and I'll create my own way. And of course, the son ends up in a life he can't live with, right? Starving, feeding the pigs. Is our story so different, right? Americans are 4.6% of the world's population and consume 80% of the world's opioids, 2/3 of the world's illegal drugs, right? 1 in 12 adult American males has an alcohol abuse disorder, and over 600,000 American children abuse alcohol, right? It's the prodigal son story, right? We have attempted to create a world without God and found we don't want to live in the world we've created, right? We look at the world we're living in and we know it cannot be our home, right? We know we were made for more,
mm-hmm.
right? We know we were made to live life abundantly, We know this life isn't abundant, right? But we don't know how to get there to that abundant life. We're like the little kid staring at the broken candy dispenser, right? You might think that a world without God is hopeless, but actually you watch a season of The Bear and you realize a world without God is not hopeless. It's worse than hopeless, right? Here we are, we're born into exile, right? But we know instinctively we're born for paradise, right? Hope is in that dynamic inevitable, right? If you're in a bad place and you know you were made for a good place, you figure you got to get there, right? Hope is in our nature. But in a world without God, hope always ends in disappointment and despair, right? Hoping to attain paradise in a world populated by 7 billion dysfunctional people, as Rich Mullins would say, is just bad math, right? Hope is only realized in the love of God.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this prodigal son parable, right? We think the son is off to a fatherless world. We think the father is dead to the son. But God the Father always insists on leaving enough light on that we can find our way home, right? And when the son comes to himself, your favorite line, right? When the son comes to himself in the prodigal son story, he sees that light and he follows it home, right? Regardless of how the bear decides to take this, and to go back to what Brenda mentioned, that you do have the Christian images, and maybe they're going to pick up on that, right? But regardless of the dynamic there, in reality, we can convince ourselves that we live in a world without God, right? A world where we are unloved and unlovable and unforgivable, a world where hope will always end in disappointment and despair. But being omnipresent means God is always there. Emmanuel is always with us. There, in reality, can never be a world without God, right?
He created the world.
Right. And he left himself in it, right?
Right.
I will always be with you till the end of time, right? I love the story of Jesus knocking Saul off his horse in Acts, right? Saul's on the road to Damascus. But I do think, and this is a little presumptive of me, I do think Luke misses a couple of lines in that story, right? So as Luke presents it, Saul, soon to be Paul, is traveling to Damascus. He's got his soldiers with him. He's got letters that say that he can lock up any Christians he finds. All of a sudden, you get this bolt of lightning. Jesus knocks Saul off his horse. He blinds him. Jesus says to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Right? Not surprisingly, Saul asks, who are you, Lord? Right? You're going to fix this problem. Whoever I'm persecuting, I'm going to change it, right? So who are you, Lord? And Jesus says, I am Jesus who you are persecuting. And in Acts, as Luke writes it, Jesus just keeps talking, right? But I think at that point, Saul actually cuts in. He has a response, which you may or may not have articulated, right? But I think he at least thought it, because it's exactly what I would have said, right? I think Saul may actually have at least been thinking, if you're Jesus, then I am persecuting you because you're destabilizing my world, my life, my future, my plans. So I need you out of my world, right? Out of my way, right?
Literally,
right? That's why am I persecuting you? Because I need to do this my way and you're in the way, right? I had this whole big plan of how I was going to be something.
And I'm the hero.
And I'm the hero of my life, and you just keep getting in the way, right? And Jesus responds to that with, but Saul, I love you, right? And it's then that Luke picks up with what Jesus says, right? Right? Then Jesus says, Saul, rise up, live life abundantly, do what I tell you to do, and I will take you places where you never imagined, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will teach you a real hope. I will love you, forgive you, heal you to a degree that you could not have ever thought possible, right? That's the culmination of the story. Lord, I'm persecuting you because you're getting in my way. No, I am your way.
Yeah, I
right?
am the way.
I am the way for you. That what you're pretending in, what you're thinking is your way, is nothing that you want to live with, right? The Bible actually is filled with people who see the world without God, see themselves as not loved, not lovable, can't become more than they currently are, right? They have no hope. And then God, Jesus, smashes their way, his way, right, into their world, just like they do with Saul, right? And once that happens, nothing can ever be the same again,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's why the Bible is the good news, because it attests that regardless of what we may think, there is no world without God,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's always going to be open, leaving the light on to get us there.
And I think as, Catholic Christians, that's got to be our message always to the world. You're going to see people around you that are hopeless, are, depressed. And instead of like, well, that's too bad for them, we need to be that beacon
Mm-hmm.
of always being a light.
I think about the woman at the well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see she's unnamed, right? The woman
Mm-hmm.
at the well. And I mean, it's astounding. Jesus tells her everything that she's doing and not doing,
Mm-hmm.
and not doing very well. And he never says to her in an accusatory way, well, you're like the biggest sinner I've met at this well.
Mm-hmm.
He just tells her what she already knows. And it's that recognition of like, wow, the biggest stumbling block sometimes is our own ego, is that we just see ourselves in a certain way and don't think that God can
Mm-hmm.
change us or make things better. Or,
Mm-hmm.
we have such tunnel vision.
I mean, it's so incredible. It's so beautiful because if you think about it, if Jesus just says, you're a nice person, glad to meet you, I love you, I'll give you some living water, right? Then there's no point to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no value in it to her, right? Because he's not loving who she is, he's loving the mask, right? The power in the story to her is, whoa, you know all this.
And you're still talking to me.
And you forgive all this, and you love the person who all of this happened to. None of this matters to you. All that matters to you is what's behind the mask.
Yeah.
What's under all this stuff that is crushing me down.
Yeah.
And you can pull me out of that. Right? That's the power of the story, is that he does acknowledge all of that, but as you said, it's not in an accusatory manner. It's daughter. None of that needs to matter.
Right.
You just need to trust in my love.
And that, take a page out of that book in our interactions with our own family and friends and just in general. Do we come across as, a know-it-all? I'm going to tell you how it really is. Are we that light of Christ that we're not fake? Transparency is key. But I believe that that's what changes hearts, is that loving embrace, so to speak, in our manner and our language and so on.
It's interesting. My son Peter we were talking about the episode of this incredible dysfunctional family night on the Bear. And he said the next day the internet lights up with all these people saying, that's my family. Right? And in a Christian family, to go back to what Brenda was saying, our message to one another needs to be the light's left on, you can find your way home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the message that we have
Not to
to
be
see.
judgmental, how easy it is to say, why are they doing it that way?
Yeah.
And just to really start the ball rolling, you have to just be
We're so
loving.
quick to write them off. But there's that hope again. There's always hope.
Mhm.
When there's God, there's hope. We're out of time. But
We are.
Can you believe it? But we invite you to join us every Friday at 12:30 on AM 720 for the Family Show. And please take just a moment and visit our website at 720whyf.com for our fall fundraiser and make a donation as generous as possible.
And the most generous donation, keep us in your prayers.
For Brenda and Randy Lee, I'm Eleanor Rossman, and we leave you with the beautiful sound of seasons.